Welcome back. This is the Clay Golem, and welcome to our Foundry VTT series. This is a series where we are looking at using Foundry VTT for running Dungeons and Dragons games and creating our adventures in there. We are on version 11 of Foundry. If you're on a later version than that, some of these things may be slightly different, of course. What we're doing for this series, just a reminder, I am a novice at this. I've had a little play, but mostly we're doing this together. So your comments and feedback is really appreciated. If you've got ideas, things you want to try or want me to try, work out how to do, leave it in the comments and we can have a look at it. But I'm not experienced with this in any way, shape or form. Experienced Dungeon Master? Yes. Experience with Foundry? No. So we're working on Shipwrecks Isle. So this is the one of the starter modules available from D&D Beyond, and we're rebuilding that effectively, that module in Foundry VTT, just so we can test out how do we use maps, how do we put in different things and get this to work in a way that's going to flow. Just a reminder, we're not using any add-ons. We probably will include some later on for quality of life and things, but at the moment we're not doing that. Right, so let's get on with this video then. So we've already created Shipwrecks Isle, the map, our starting map, and as you can see it takes us straight to this. And we've created Seagrow Caves. So we've done lots of work on this with looking at lighting, looking at putting in the walls and encounters and things. But there's a couple of things that have occurred to me since the last video that we probably need to tweak. And one of those is about these walls. So if I click on my character here, remember we've got our line of sight on. Some of my walls aren't great. They're not quite where I want them to be. So bearing in mind our token will fit nicely into our grid and can move by that grid. There are a few areas where we can move slightly off grid and into that wall. So if we zoom in and have a closer look here, because where we've set our wall, the token technically can come and sit in some of these walls here. So when I was putting the walls together, I deliberately wanted to leave some of this rock surface so the players can see that this is a rock-lined cavern. If I have the walls too far into the corridor, they won't be able to see that because of the way that we've got the walls blocking light. Obviously, makes a lot of sense. However, I've been a little too over-generous, and as you can see, there are definitely parts of this where because of where the wall is, our token can actually sit the wrong side of that, which is not what we want. So I'm going to tweak some of these walls. I think that's the very first thing we're going to do. This might not be particularly interesting for this part, so but this is all we need to do for it. Is we can literally just drag and drop all of these nodes, move them out further so that they are not, and if we've got a gap here, we can just drag that and close that off a bit. So I just want to move some of these nodes in, bring some of these walls in much closer to the edge so that we can't have our characters inadvertently standing in the wall. We don't want that. Our lighting and stuff looks like it's working fine. Quite happy with that, actually. It's nice and atmospheric for this given sort of encounter area, this scenario, if you like. Just move that one in. It doesn't need to be perfect. You might be thinking I'm being a bit pedantic here. Is this necessary to be this precise? Probably not. But we're here to learn, so let's try and do it properly. Let's see what we can do to get this as properly nice as we can. So I'm going to move that one up there and just move these closer to these edges where we can. A little bit laborious, not very exciting. But I think it will impact the overall experience of our players. And of course, that's the whole point, isn't it? We're wanting to make the best experience for our players that we can. And so that it makes as much sense to them when they're running around here of what they can see, where they can go, etc. I think I'll bring that one all the way down there. We can join that up there, move this one down here a bit. Okay, so we're just moving these closer. A little bit too generous with the amount of wall they can see. Hadn't taken into account the fact that they could walk through some of these walls. Like this bit here, for example, there's a good square and a bit. They're going to be able to stand right the way down here in that rock wall. It's just too much. just too much. So you know, this is about learning. This is about what works, what doesn't work. And it's just one thing that occurred to me, wasn't anywhere near as perfect as I wanted it to be. So we just change it. It really is that simple. We just come in, change what we didn't like, make some changes. We can just add an extra wall in for this bit. In fact, I'm going to go right up to that crease there. I'm going to bring that one to there. I'm going to bring this one down here. That one I can get rid of. I'm going to bring this down to this bit, and remember to get it to continue with an existing wall. I'm just holding down Control and dragging out that new wall so that it's going where I want it to be. Okay, so some of you might need to be careful. So you can see there's some light. If we're not careful, we let light through our walls, so we do need to make sure these gaps are closed. In fact, might move that in slightly further. Oh no, but you need to be careful about that. I think we'll move this one. Yep. Be careful which one we're grabbing here, and add an extra bit of wall in there. That's fine. Bring that across. Bring this one down a bit. I think we're going to need another bit of wall in here. It doesn't matter how many walls we have, and it doesn't matter. You know, you be as precise as you want to be. What's going to work for you and your group. You might be looking at this going, blimey, why are you bothering? Stop being pedantic. You know, if the player tries to move somewhere they're not supposed to, you can just move them out. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Is this overkill? Maybe. But we're here to learn, so we might as well learn to do it properly and as accurately as we would like it to be, rather than just cheating it. It's some light bleeding through because we haven't got that wall in. Okay, and some of these areas are much worse than others. Some of them aren't bad at all, to be honest. I've just been a little bit generous, perhaps been a little bit hasty for the sake of the video, and not really put as much care and attention into it that I now feel it kind of needs to. All right, so not too much longer, hopefully. Just bringing all these in here. There's a big gap here. We can close that off nicely. Bring this up a bit further. Lovely. Pull this out. And again, at any time we can flip over to our character and just check we're happy with what is now our new result for this. I'll bring that down a bit. Remember to close it off. We could bend this bit out a little bit here. We don't want like big straight walls here. It's probably nicer, bearing in mind we're not talking about big straight brick walls, we're talking about caverns. It might be nicer if we make sure that these caverns don't have completely straight walls, and it matches up a little bit better with some of this rougher terrain. It just makes more sense in the context, doesn't it? It's a cavern. It's not a brick building. Okay, I'm going to leave that one. That's okay. Bring this one in a bit. I've got to be careful not to bring that in too far. I bring this one up a bit, and then bring a new one in down here. That's fine, and then join that up there. That's a bit better. This one definitely can move in a bit. We can move this one down a bit, and then we can put a new one in here. Just again to close that off, and you can see the light disappearing as we close off some of those slightly too large gaps. So again, just draw another one across here. Then we can connect that one up there. This is a big long one, this one. This might be a bit too long. Let's bring it down here. Bring that out and close it off that way. Just gives us that slight curvature that follows the rock walls. Not so worried about down here. Chances are we're not going to be having combats and stuff on this sea path. And so there's going to be less opportunity or potential for characters to move their tokens into the rock wall. If they do, yeah, we can just move them out again. It's not a big drama by any means. Okay, so that should be a little bit better. If we want, we can pop back into our character. Where is she? Here she is. And we can test those walls. Actually, it does let me cross them. I think that's because we're in DM mode. But again, what we're going to do is once we've got this and we're happy with our setup, we will join the game as a player character and just make sure that all of those things are going to work before we invite our players in. You know, for those of you who play computer games, nothing worse than buying a game. You know, you get, you know, it's an alpha release. You start playing and you start finding problems with it that just ruin the fun, and they break the whole thing. So I'm just going to click on here, just double check that we've got all of our movement restrictions and stuff on. So it should work fine. I suspect it's because we're in the DM mode. The good thing is the lights are good now. Okay, so hopefully that will improve that, but we'll check it proper later, as I say, before we bring in any of the players and stuff. So the next thing I want to do on this one, before we move to the next map, is I want to have a little play with sounds. Now, I've not used sounds before. It looks reasonably straightforward to do the basics, and I suspect there's plenty of add-on modules that can make this really, really sort of pop and be able to do all sorts of wonderful things. But remember, we're not using add-ons, so we're going to stick with the basic stuff. Okay, so I did already download, I just went to the internet, I googled a few sound effects, mostly so that we can try them out and see how that works, and we're going to install those. We're going to put them into our game and just see how that works. So we do have this ambient sound controls button here, and this lets us, it looks like it works very similar to putting our lights in. So we're going to draw ambient sound, and first of all I'm going to pick this waterfall, or this water area, and yes, so I can draw out a just like the light, a radius of where this sound can be heard. So this is going to be running water, so the chances are you're going to be able to hear it. Perhaps not by the sea. We might need to find some crashing waves for that entrance place, but let's put it there. Alright, so just like the lights, we've got some options here for this. The very first thing we've got is we need to link to our file with our sounds in. So if I go into my sounds folder, I just dumped these in here so they were easy to find. One of the ones I had a very quick look at, I suspect there's much better ones to use out there, but I just grabbed some. We're trying this, we're seeing how it is. So this one's running water, I grabbed. You can see we've got a radius effect on here, so as we stretch that, but we can set it very specifically. And we've got this option for volume easing, so it adjusts the volume of the sound as you get closer. So that is exactly what you would want with, you know, a crackling bonfire, a babbling brook, maybe people talking in a tavern. The closer you get to that sound, the louder it gets. So that definitely seems like something we want to do. We can also talk about whether this is constrained by walls. So can sound pass through those walls or not? That's going to be very much dependent on your setting. So if you're in an inn, are all the walls in the inn absolutely soundproof? Well, probably not. In this scenario, we're happy to constrain it by walls. I don't think it makes any difference. You're either in the cavern or you're not. And our players, of course, because of our walls, can't pass outside them anyway. So we'll leave that constrained by walls. If we untick that, I'm not going to save it actually. If we untick that, this should go back to a full circle. But at the moment, it is constrained by walls. So we can see where we can hear it and where we can't. We have a volume control, understandable. Let's leave that as default. And you can see there's a darkness activation range. Now, we talked a little bit about this with lights. For the scene, we can set a darkness level for it, and we've obviously set ours to be really quite dark. The idea being is that if we darken the scene, once it gets to a certain level of darkness, it might trigger sounds or it might trigger lights. So we talked about, and we haven't done it, and it's something to play with in the future, that as it gets dark, maybe you start to see lights come on, like street lamps and things within your map of your village. It might be as it gets darker, some of the sounds of the street go away and are replaced by other sounds from the evening. So you might change twittering birds to chirping crickets or something like that. So you've got two different sounds, but only one is playing in daylight and the other one's playing as it gets darker, and they kind of switch out. That'd be really nice dynamic effect, especially if we're doing like, you know, a camp scene. The party has stopped for a rest, and they've stopped in the afternoon, it's still daylight, and you can fade that out to the nighttime scene. do what they need to do and then fade it back into daytime before they continue. And we might do that. We might build a new scene that is specifically about the party having a rest, just so we can play with those things. Okay, so we don't need it for this though, because that water is not light activated. It's going to be running all the time, so we can leave that. So let's create that ambient sound, and that's sitting on there now. In theory, if we select our character, we should be able to hear it. So as we get closer to the source of that, we can. I'm not sure if you can hear that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come, not into the lights, going to come back into the sound, double click it. I'm going to turn this maximum volume up. Okay, and save that. Go back to our character and select her. So that's much louder now. And certainly for the volume I've got the rest of my setup, that's kind of where I would want it actually. As my token moves further away, that sound is barely audible, so it drifts. Now, of course, the wider that area is, the quicker the slower that drop off of sound would be. But as I get closer, it gets louder. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And it seems to work. That's really quite easy to do. All we did was draw the radius, choose the file, a couple of options, and there we go. We've got some babbling brook. Now, is that the sound effect I want for this area? Possibly. I might want that tickling around in the background. I think what I might do, though, is up that radius. On the theory being that if you're in this room over here, and it's completely silent, there's a good chance you could hear this. It depends how fast that water's flowing, and that, I suppose that's really a decision for you and your game. So I'm just going to up that. So if you're walking back from this passageway up here, as you're walking here, you can start to hear those sounds just slightly coming in and get louder and louder as you get towards this brook or this stream, and then fading away as you get further away again. So we can just prove the concept. So while we're over here, we cannot hear that. We're too far away. If we move to here, I can't quite hear it. To here, I'm not sure if that picks up for you. I can just about hear it. Getting louder. And then it's at full volume. Now remember, these are supposed to be background sounds. You don't want it so loud that it's drowning out your players. Not generally. It might be. You know, there's a bit of a waterfall here. Maybe you've got a spectacular waterfall and actually you want that sound really quite loud. So yeah, you have a play with it, see what you can do. Alright, so I just want to have a little play with that, see how that works. That works really well. What we will need to do before we do other sounds in here, that's an obvious one, that's running water, we can do that. What we want to do is refer back to the module and just find out a bit more about these areas, what is in there, what might be making a noise, what other types of light sources might there be, and then we can come back and put those little details in when we're putting back in like the monsters and creatures and things. So the module might, for example, say, there's 3 goblins sitting around a campfire, sort of in this area up here. Just give me the what's that for? Oh, that's to select tokens. There's a ping. You can make it ping. I've done it by accident several times. Can't get it to do it right now, of course. But it might be there's some goblins having a campfire here, so we're going to want to put in an icon for a campfire. We might want to add some lights, so we've got that flickering campfire light. We might want to add some sounds about that crackling campfire, and then put some goblin tokens around it. And maybe we want to put in a sound file of goblins chattering or something, if we can find one. You know, I wouldn't suggest that we become sound engineers to deliberately make specific sounds, but the more immersive we can make it, the better for our players, the more enjoyable it would be. So I would probably add a campfire sound. If I can find goblin chittering sounds, I might add that in just for a bit of variety. Give the players a clue that up ahead they can already hear these chittering voices, so they may choose to then be stealthy and try to sneak up on the goblins, rather than blundering in, not realising that there's something there. It also saves me as the DM a little bit of work remembering, oh yeah, in the next chamber that's happening. you would be able to hear this, or you would be able to smell that. So there might be some things like that. And talking of smells, that's the one thing we can't do on here at the moment, is we can't, we can put sounds, we can put sight, that all works digitally. We can't make smells. So that was a little, if anybody's got any ideas of how we could put something on to remind us about smells. Let's say there's a vent over here releasing stinky, sulphurous, volcanic smoke. They're going to be able to smell it, and it's going to get stronger as they head towards there. If you've got any ideas of how we might represent that, not necessarily for the players, but even as a kind of a reminder for the DM, that even though we're in this section here, we're reading out the B2 description, they can start to smell that from there. Might be, I don't really want to just put it in a journal, so maybe there's a way we can do that. So any got any ideas? Yeah, let us know. That would be great. Okay, right, so what do we want to do next then? This kind of scene is pretty much ready for us to put our monsters and start detailing on, but I don't want to do that just yet. I think what we're going to do, if I pop back to my scenes, because we've got a few to do, and we spent quite, we've spent, what, this is like the third video where we're just looking at this scene. I think perhaps we will jump and have a look at one of the other scenes here. And maybe, so what have we got? We've got Seagrow Caves, we've kind of done. We've got the Dragon's Rest, which is the town, which we've not done yet. We've got the Clifftop Observatory to do, and we've got the Compass Rose. Why don't we have a look and do the Compass Rose? Let's just see what that's about. So I'm going to create a new scene. Okay, so just up the top right, I've gone to my Scenes tab, New Scene, and this is, well, strictly speaking, it's called the Wreck of the Compass Rose, but I'm just going to call it the Compass Rose because we don't want it to be too massive in our too massive title. And here we are. We need to think about a navigation again. So it's called the Compass Rose. We're going to copy that navigation name so it's the same when it appears at the top here, and there you can see Compass Rose. Who can see this? We want it in our navigation for us as the GM, but we don't want the players to be able to just jump here whenever they like, so we're going to leave that as it is. We need to go to our file path, and we need to find, so I'm going to go into my Shipwreck Isle because that's still named wrong. Go into my maps folder, and we're going to find the right one. Now I haven't uploaded the Clifftop Observatory yet. Sorry, the Compass Rose yet. So I'm going to click, choose File. You can see just a few of the sounds I downloaded. I'm going to go back to my Stormwreck, back to my maps, and then I should be able to find, here is the Compass Rose. Now again, I have a DM version of that, but I want to be using the player version without the annotations for them to be able to see, and we can manually put on those annotations ourselves, just like we did with Seagrow. Okay, so we've selected that, selected file. We don't need a foreground image. We'll play with that at some point. I haven't used that at all yet. Okay, let's save changes. We've now got our Compass Rose and we can navigate it top left here, etc. All right, so this is what the Compass Rose looks like. You can see it's got 4 levels. So this is going to be slightly different from what we've done with the cave. Upper deck, which is basically going to be the forecastle, and not very good with my parts of ships, the bow and the stern. We've got the main deck, which has got some cabins. So this upper deck, this front bit and this back bit are on top of the main deck front bit and back bit. So it's layered. We've also got the lower deck. So going down these steps here brings us to this level, which is obviously partially submerged, and then there's more steps down which take us to the hold, which is completely underwater, and as you can see it's got some big holes in it. So what's our first job? We should know what that's going to be. We need to look at this grid. So here is again, so I'm going to do right click and configure, go to grid, and the first thing I'm going to do, just because it's easier to see, is I'm going to change the color and put up the opacity of our grid. So there we go. We can see our grid in red. This is the Foundry grid, and the map already has it printed on for the map grid. So If you remember, it took us a while to do that in Seagrow Cave, so we know how to do this now. It's still going to be a little bit fiddly. We need to grow the map so that it matches the size of the Foundry grid. So again, go to my navigation, right click, configure on my grid thing. The first thing we can do is lower the size of the Foundry grid as small as it will go, which is 50. It's going to redraw that, and we're much closer. It automatically closes that, so I'm going to go back to configure. Okay, and now we can use this. I'll put that down the bottom right. Under grid type, this grid configuration. All right, now if you remember, we're using a square grid, but we can scale the background. Now 1.9 was about right for the last one. So let's try that. It's always going to recenter it because it's scaling. Okay, I'm just going to save changes. So it brings the whole map back. Remember, we had that last time. It was like, where's the map gone? And it scaled it off the page for us. So we know about that now. Not quite so panicky. Okay, so on this grid tool, we've set our background scale to 1.9, which is much closer to where we want to be. We can use those arrows to move the map in the background against the VTT grid. And I'm looking at this square here. We can see that we're not there yet. We need the image to be smaller to match the Foundry VTT one, because it's not the Foundry grid we're changing the size of, it's the size of the image. So just a reminder of the instructions here: shift and mouse wheel or up arrows so that we can start to change the sizes and hopefully get that to match. Yeah, I've got a way to go yet. I'm not even sure if these two images are, as in this map and the Seagrow Cave, I'm not even sure if the maps themselves are the same scale. It's looking, we're getting there. We're getting there. That's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to match up again. I'm just looking at this one for the moment, trying to match that one up. That's close, but as we can see, that drifts off quite a lot off to one side, and as we go down, so we're a fair way off of that. Am I taking the grid in the correct direction? There's the problem, is you think you're heading in the right direction, and suddenly you realize you're scrolling in the wrong direction and you're not getting anywhere near where you need to be. That's much closer. So I think I was scrolling in the wrong direction, of course. Okay. It's exciting, isn't it? Just watching me scrolling and trying to fit some squares together. Obviously, you're welcome to fast forward this bit. It must be quite painful to watch, to be honest. Okay, so am I going the right way now? How is that grid? Okay, so it looks to me like that image needs to go down a bit to match. Just focusing on this square where my arrow is at the moment. So at the top right here, that's in, but we're that way, so I need the image to go smaller, which it's doing. Match that back. Needs to go smaller still. Seems to do that little jump every now and then, which makes me a bit nervous. Still needs to be smaller. That's definitely smaller than 1.9, which is about where we were for the other map. Not too far off. Let's keep going. Yeah, a bit more. Again, a bit more. So we can focus on trying to get the horizontal correct first, or the vertical, because being a square grid, if you get one of them correct, the other one should be correct too. So this is looking good, but we can see it drifts off as we go because our map is still slightly too wide. So definitely this image is a slightly different size to the previous one. So looking really good in the middle there, but we're still drifting off as we go off to one side. So, whoops. I'm trying to keep it small so you can see the lines on the video. We're still looking good, but we're drifting off still, so we still need it to be smaller. Yeah, significant difference in these, in the maps between this and Seagrow. Almost there by the looks of it. In fact, this one looks like it's slightly too small. Yeah, slightly too. I think we've got slightly beyond where we need to be now. Okay, so looking at this matches all the way along here, and if we line it up with the horizontals, that looks good. So we're going to zoom out, because obviously we're doing it might look all right there, but the further we get away from that point of origin, you can see it starts to get a little bit loose there. So this is about our boxes being slightly too small. Okay, so that's good at that end. If we come all the way to the other end, slightly off, not by much, it really is tiny, but the difference between one end and the other end of the ship. Yeah, look, that looks absolutely fine there compared to the middle. The bottom looks fine compared to the top. It's got a little bit of wonkiness right up at this extreme, but our tokens are going to be on the boats. I mean, they may well end up in the water, of course, but I suspect that is going to be perfectly adequate for what we need. All right, let's save changes. Don't mess with it anymore. That's good. All right, so we've got our grid now, which is brilliant. And because our VTT grid now matches the image, I'm going to totally turn off the VTT grid because I'd say turn it off. That's incorrect. I'm going to hide it. So I'm going to make it completely turn off all of its opaqueness, so turn down its opacity so you can't see it. We can see through it effectively because we've got the map grid there. All right, so we've got our grid done. Brilliant. Save changes, make sure that stays. Okay, sorry for that slight interruption. There's a bit of a jump in the video there. My dog decided to go completely nuts, and so I had to quickly take that out, but hopefully this is edited together quite smoothly. All right, so we've got our grid set up, we've got our map here. So we can check our grid, of course, by top right going to our actors, and we've got our test character here. Now, we have already put this test character down in Seagrow Caves, but of course, as our characters move from scene to scene, our players do, we're going to have them appearing in multiple different scenes. So we can easily do that. They all relate back to this main actor here. This is just a token that represents them, so they can effectively be in two places at once, but your players are only ever, and as the DM, we're only going to be looking at one scene at a time. All right, so the first thing to do, if we click on it straight away, everything goes dark. Now the reason for that, of course, is the fact that under our vision, so I double right clicked to bring up our options, we've got that vision enabled, which means we can only see what that character, what that token can see, and we've not set any light for our scene, hence it's very dark. Okay, so just coming back out of that, we can go to our scene, right click on the compass rose and configure, and now we have our lighting. Now we want to be a little bit careful with our lighting here on the basis of if we use global illumination, it's going to let everything be viewable. But if we just come back to the map, this upper deck is in daylight or night's time, whichever it happens to be. This is open to the elements. But when we look at the main deck, this front bit here and these back, these front couple of rooms and these back couple of rooms are indoors. So do we want global illumination for them to just say they're lit all the time? And what about the lower deck? So we're down here, is this going to be fully lit all the time? And what about the one that's actually underwater? So it would suggest that we don't want to do global illumination. So we're going to turn that, we want to make sure that stays off. We don't want that global illumination on. We want our decks below and our rooms to actually be dark. So what that's going to mean is we're going to need a light source so that our actor can actually see something. So if we are going to assume that this is daylight, we can actually, so left click and drag out all the way, and we can cover the entire scene with this one light, which means everything will be lit. But remember, when we put walls in place, it will block that light. So our ambient light, we don't need to set an emission angle because we want it everywhere. We might want to choose a colour for it. So what about sort of a pale yellow perhaps? Oh, that's not what we want. Look at that intensity. So can we turn that intensity right the way down? We can turn it right the way down. How's that going to affect our actor? There we go. So now we've turned down that intensity, but now the whole thing is fully lit. and our actor can move around. Okay, now we haven't got any shadows, so it doesn't really matter where we put that light source. It's not casting shadows for us. But what we will find is when we build walls, so by putting the light here, once we build these walls, we won't be able to see beyond here. So what we're probably going to want to do is to light this general, at least these open areas, from several different places. I mean, it might be that actually what we do is we say we want this to all be lit to make sure all of that upstairs gets lit. I can do Control V, make sure it's selected, Control C, Control V. Last time that let us paste it, didn't it? Now why is it not doing that this time? How strange. Control C. There we go. Don't know quite what I was doing, didn't have it selected properly. And we can drag that over here so we can make sure that these areas, even when we put walls up, should hopefully remain lit. But again, once we've done the walls, we'll have a look at the lighting and we'll fiddle with it if we need to. But just going back to our token and clicking on her again. There we go. We can move her around and everything stays lit. Alright, so that's going to bring us to the end of this particular video. So we've set up a new scene, we've done the grid, which seems to be the most laborious part of setting up a new scene at the moment, where we're trying to match that grid to the image. And we've put in some really basic lighting. So next time on this one, what we're probably going to want to do is put all of those walls in, adjust that lighting so that we can move around. Now, some of you might be already thinking about, well, we've got stairs here with multiple layers. What happens when our character moves 2 stairs? Because in theory, if we go up these stairs here, we're going to appear at the top of these stairs all the way over here. So is there a way that we can do that? Now, I know there are add-ons that help you do exactly that. So it links this staircase over here to this staircase. So if you go into that square, it effectively teleports you. But I don't think you can do that in the base Foundry without add-ons. I'm not sure. If any of you know, please let me know, because I haven't got a clue if that is a thing. I don't think it is. So we would be, you know, sort of our token would move to there, and then we would be saying, oh, you go down the steps and you appear over there, and we'd have to do it like that. Is that game breaking? Absolutely not. Does it break immersion? A little bit. It's up to you. You know, for this series, we're going to do the best we can with base Foundry. But later on, if we find an add-on that's going to do that for us, we can have a look at it. We can have a play and see what it does. Thank you for your time. Appreciate those of you who are following along in the series. Please leave a like on the video. It really does help. Leave some comments and feedback. What are you enjoying? What would you like to see? Is there anything you think I'm missing? And subscribe so that you can get notifications of the next videos. The more feedback you give, the more interaction you guys give, the more enthusiastic I am about continuing to do these videos and this series and sending it in a direction that you guys want to see that's going to be useful for you. So once again, this is the Clay Golem, and I'll catch you in the next one.